Living in Singapore with only English is like watching a movie with the sound muted. You see the actors, you see the lights, you think you understand the plot, but you miss every real conversation happening in the room. Singapore looks like an English-speaking paradise on the surface. Glass towers, global banks, expats sipping overpriced coffee pretending they understand Asia. Everything labelled in English. Every MRT announcement polite and bilingual enough to lull foreigners into intellectual sleepwalking, and that's exactly the trap. Because the real Singapore does not operate in English. The real money does not whisper in English. The real deals, property flips, insider networks, supplier negotiations, political hints, and capital migration signals happen in Mandarin, dialects, and culturally coded speech you never hear. If English is your only operating system in Singapore, you are functionally deaf in the world's most competitive financial marketplace. You are not global. You are blindfolded with confidence. The illusion of access. Why English gives you the view, not the power. English gives you a job title, a salary, a clean condo lease, a polite HR onboarding deck, a LinkedIn profile that feels important. English does not give you early property pipeline information, developer discount whispers, private capital rotations, SME deal flow, family office rumour channels, political regulatory signals, real estate land bank strategy, chatter, pre-IPO whispers, supplier margin negotiations, cash flow structuring tactics. Those conversations never happen in polished corporate English. They happen over noisy lunches in Mandarin. They happen in WeChat groups. They happen in dialect jokes that encode trust. They happen in private dinners where English suddenly disappears like a magician's assistant. You are sitting at the same table, but you are not in the same conversation. That's not multicultural harmony. That's economic segregation with better lighting, banking, capital, and the language. Nobody warned you about walk into any major Singapore bank. On paper, everything is English. But the serious clients? Mainland investors, Taiwanese capital families, Southeast Asian Chinese conglomerates, property syndicates, shadow financing networks, SME credit circles, commodity traders, regional logistics dynasties. They operate internally in Chinese. Loan structuring decisions, Chinese. Risk appetite gossip, Chinese. Which developer is quietly distressed, Chinese. Which project will get rescued by private capital, Chinese. Which politician's cousin is backing a land deal, Chinese. English speakers get the sanitized brochure version. Chinese speakers get the early warning system. And early information is money. Late information is poverty dressed as professionalism. Real estate, the market. You think you understand, but don't foreigners love talking about Singapore property like it's a transparent spreadsheet, price per square foot, yield, cooling measures, ABSD, URA data, rental demand, cute. Meanwhile, the real property game moves through developer relationship networks, family capital recycling, quiet bulk purchases, pre-launch reservation signaling, land rezoning whispers, collective sale politics, offshore fund rotations, liquidity timing strategies. All of it flows through Chinese-speaking ecosystems. If you don't speak the language, you buy when the smart money sells. You rent when insiders accumulate. You panic when locals arbitrage. You chase yield after it's already harvested. You are playing Monopoly with half the rulebook missing. The psychological scam, but everyone speaks English here. Yes, everyone speaks English. That's exactly why you're being politely excluded from power. English is the public lobby. Chinese is the executive floor. You're welcome to stay in the lobby forever. Plenty of coffee shops, nice air conditioning, motivational posters about diversity, no access to the vault. If you actually want content that doesn't insult your intelligence, hit subscribe and like. That's how this channel survives algorithm stupidity. You thought English gave you access. It gave you visibility without control, presence without power, comfort without leverage. You're watching Singapore with the sound muted, and the plot twist is costing you money every single year. Singapore loves to market itself as a rules-based, transparent, English-speaking financial hub. That story is for brochures, embassy websites, and expats who need emotional reassurance. Capital does not move because of transparency. Capital moves because of trust, speed, silence, and language. And in Singapore, the operating language of real capital is Chinese. Language is not communication, it is a filtering system. Most foreigners think language is about understanding words. That's adorable. In Singapore, language is a social firewall. English is the open network. Chinese is the private server. If you only speak English, you receive information after it is approved. You are invited after decisions are made. You buy after pricing. Power is gone. You work after equity is assigned. You invest after insiders exit. You are not excluded aggressively. You are excluded efficiently. Nobody hates you. They just don't need you. Where capital is born versus where salaries are paid. Here's the brutal split foreigners don't like to admit. English world salaries, bonuses, employment contracts, performance reviews, HR compliance, corporate titles, LinkedIn applause, Chinese world capital pooling, family offices, private lending property syndicates, cash flow arbitrage, supplier credit inventory financing, quiet bailouts, distressed asset takeovers, English pays your rent, Chinese builds ownership. That's the difference between income and wealth, SMEs, contractors, and the invisible economy. You never see foreigners obsess over MNCs. Locals obsess over SMEs. Why? Because Singapore's real economic engine isn't the multinational office tower. It's the Chinese-speaking SME ecosystem that controls construction logistics, wholesale trade, import-export, food supply chains, dormitory labour, subcontracting layers, cash-based liquidity. These businesses lend to each other informally, extend credit without paperwork, rotate cash internally, rescue each other quietly, kill competitors without lawsuits, all in Chinese. English speakers see a restaurant, a warehouse, a logistics firm. Chinese speakers see who owns the debt, who controls the cash, who is about to collapse, who is about to expand. You see the storefront. They see the balance sheet behind the curtain. Property isn't bought, it's whispered about. Let's talk property again, because that's where foreigners bleed the most money. Public data tells you what already happened. Chinese networks tell you what is about to happen. Who knows first? Which project will struggle? Which developer is over-leveraged? Which unit types insiders are avoiding? Which collective sale will fail? Which one will suddenly revive? Which foreign capital is exiting quietly? Not the English-speaking analyst. The Chinese-speaking auntie who has lunch with the developer's cousin. This is not corruption. This is network economics. If you don't speak the language, you don't belong to the network. And if you don't belong, you pay retail forever. Why expats plateau financially at year 5 to 7? Watch any long-term expat in Singapore. Year 1 to 3, excitement, salary jump, lifestyle upgrade. Year 4 to 6, comfort, routine, condo renewal, same circle. Year 7 plus, stagnation, complaints. Singapore is expensive. I work so hard but can't get ahead. They blame the government, the market taxes, housing policy. They never blame language, because blaming language means admitting you misunderstood the game. You didn't fail. You were just playing the spectator version. If this makes you defensive, that's a sign it matters. Subscribe and like, or keep pretending English equals power. Let's kill a comforting myth right now. Singapore did not push Mandarin because of heritage, roots, or some soft-focus multicultural fantasy they show at National Day. This was not about culture. This was not about identity. This was not about nostalgia. This was a hard, cold, economic weaponization of language, and it worked frighteningly well. Language policy as economic infrastructure. Most countries treat language as a social issue. Singapore treated language as infrastructure, like ports, runways, and fiber cables. English was chosen for global access, legal clarity, trade neutrality, MNC attraction. Mandarin was enforced for internal cohesion, capital networking, regional leverage, long-term wealth control. English opens the door. Mandarin decides who owns the building. This was deliberate. Children didn't learn Chinese. They were trained for capital participation. Why good enough Chinese was never enough. Foreigners love to say, "I speak some Mandarin, it's fine." No, it's not. Singapore's system doesn't reward basic communication. It rewards fluency under pressure. Because real conversations aren't classroom Mandarin textbook grammar tourist phrases. They are fast, noisy dialect, influenced, full of subtext, embedded with hierarchy, loaded with unspoken assumptions. If you hesitate, you're marked. If you ask for repetition, you're downgraded. If you miss a joke, you're not trusted. And trust is the currency that moves money faster than contracts. Why non-Chinese Singaporeans feel uncomfortable and why that was accepted. Here's the uncomfortable part. Nobody wants to say out loud. Yes, this system creates discomfort for Malays, Indians, English-only expats, Western professionals, global citizens. And Singapore accepted that cost. Because the alternative was worse. Losing control of capital in a Chinese-dominated regional economy. Singapore chose economic survival over emotional comfort. That's not racism, that's state-level realism. You don't need everyone to feel included. You need your core economic engine to function flawlessly. The result, a bilingual elite and a permanent ceiling. What did this produce? A society where everyone speaks English but only some control capital, only some hear early signals, only some access informal leverage, only some recycle wealth across generations. The rest live well, comfortably, safely, politely, but not powerfully. This is why you see high salaries but low ownership, good jobs but limited upside, clean lives but capped influence. It's not discrimination, it's design. Why English-only foreigners misread Singapore. Completely foreigners keep asking, why does Singapore feel efficient but cold? Why do I feel productive but replaceable? Why do locals seem ahead even with similar jobs? Because you're inside a system that was never optimized for you to win long term. You are labor, you are liquidity, you are optional, you are not the core, and the core speaks Mandarin. If this makes you uncomfortable, congratulations. That's what clarity feels like before denial kicks in. Subscribe and like, or keep watching life with the sound muted. Singapore tells you the labour market is merit-based, performance, KPIs, diversity, global talent, all technically true, and completely misleading. Because in Singapore, careers are built in English, but promotions are decided in Chinese. You don't hit a wall. You simply stop being invited into the room where decisions are made. The invisible promotion line. Nobody explains. Here's the pattern foreigners notice but never articulate. You get hired easily, you perform well, you receive good reviews, you get raises, you train juniors, you stabilize operations. Then, nothing. No leap, no equity, no strategic role, no real power expansion. You plateau politely. Locals with similar skills move ahead. Not because they are smarter, but because they are linguistically embedded. They don't need to ask. They overhear. How decisions are actually made. Official meetings are in English. Real alignment happens before the meeting. In lunch conversations, corridor exchanges, private WhatsApp groups, WeChat threads, family dinners, alumni networks, dialect jokes, casual complaints that signal intent. By the time the English meeting starts, the outcome is already locked. You are there to execute, present document, comply not to shape. English is the record, Chinese is the decision. Finance, strategy, and trusted roles. Look closely at who controls. Treasury vendor selection, procurement capital allocation, regional expansion, M&A sourcing, risk exceptions, internal transfers. These roles demand trust, not just skill. Trust requires shared language, shared cultural cues, shared silence. You can't NDA your way into that. You can't KPI your way into that. You can't PowerPoint your way into that. If you don't speak Chinese fluently, you are structurally disqualified from the inner loop. Why foreign managers manage, but rarely own foreigners often end up as country managers, operations leads, compliance heads, process optimizers, change managers, important roles, disposable roles. Ownership stays elsewhere. When things go well, you're praised. When things go wrong, you're replaced. Capital continuity beats talent every time. The long-term damage, high income, low trajectory. This is why so many expats say, I earn well, but I don't feel secure. I'm busy, but not building anything. I'm respected, but not indispensable. You are running fast on a treadmill designed by someone else. You don't fall behind. You just never move forward. If this feels uncomfortably familiar, it's because it is. Subscribe and like, or keep calling it bad luck. Now comes the part everyone avoids, not the diagnosis, the decision. Because once you understand the system, you lose the right to pretend you're confused. Singapore gives you 3 options. There is no fourth, there is no hack, there is no LinkedIn influencer shortcut. Option 1, learn Chinese seriously, not politely. This is the hardest option. That's why most people reject it emotionally while claiming they are considering it. Learning Chinese in Singapore does not mean Duolingo streaks, business Mandarin certificates, polite dinner conversation, ordering food confidently. It means listening faster than you're comfortable with, being wrong publicly, missing jokes until you don't, understanding hierarchy without explanation, catching tone shifts, reading silence, enduring embarrassment. You are not learning a language, you are reprogramming your social operating system. If you do this well, something strange happens. You stop being briefed, you start being included. You hear problems before they are announced, you see deals before they are marketed. You are no longer the foreigner in the room. This takes years, not months. Most people won't do it, which is exactly why it works. Option 2. Use English for income, Chinese networks for capital, indirectly. Some people don't become fluent, they become strategic. They partner with Chinese speakers, hire them early, align with family offices, piggyback on networks without trying to dominate them, bring value. English speakers are good at shut up and listen when Chinese capital moves. They stop trying to belong and start trying to position. This path requires humility, and most professionals would rather be broke than humble. But this is how some foreigners quietly win. They don't fight the system, they don't romanticize it, they treat Singapore like a machine, not a moral project. Option 3. Leave before the plateau becomes your identity. This is the option nobody wants to admit is rational. If you are over 40, have no intention of learning Chinese, are capped in promotion, feel productive but stagnant, rent forever. Renegotiate the same salary every 2-3 years. Tell yourself, at least it's safe. Then Singapore is no longer a growth platform. It's a comfortable holding pen. Staying too long doesn't just cost money, it costs trajectory. Some people should leave earlier, not later. Before complacency settles, before identity fossilizes, before you mistake stability for progress. Leaving is not failure. Staying without leverage is. The one thing you must stop believing. Stop saying, Singapore is fair. Singapore is transparent. Singapore rewards merit. Those are partial truths designed to keep the system calm. Singapore rewards alignment, predictability, network coherence, capital literacy, linguistic access. Merit is necessary. It is never sufficient. If this helped you see the system clearly, act like it mattered. Subscribe, like, share, or keep watching life with the sound muted. Final closing, living in Singapore with only English is not tragic. It's just expensive in invisible ways. You don't starve, you don't fail, you don't collapse. You just never fully arrive. You watch the movie. The picture is perfect. The actors look successful. but the sound is off, and the plot was never meant for you unless you chose to hear it.